All right, Chapter 12, Mr. Smedley. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and Chester Cricket's new manager, Tucker Mouse, was pacing up and down in front of the cricket cage. Harry Cat was lying on the shelf with his tail drooping over the edge, and Chester himself was relaxing in the matchbox. "Well, I have been given the new situation, my serious consideration. And as a matter of fact, I couldn't think of anything else all day. The first thing to understand is Chester Cricket is a very talented person." "Oh, here," said Harry. Chester smiled at him. He was really an awful nice person. "The second thing is talent is something rare and beautiful and precious, and it must not be allowed to go to waste. And the third thing is there might be, who could tell, a little money in it, maybe." "Oh, I knew this was at the bottom of it," said Harry. "Now wait. Please just listen a minute before you begin to call me a greedy rodent," said Tucker. He went down beside Chester and Harry. "The newsstand is doing lousy, right? Right. If the Bellanys were happy, Mama Bellany wouldn't be always wanting to get rid of him, right? Right. She likes him today because he played her favorite song. But who can tell how she might like him tomorrow? And also, I don't like to help them. I do like to help them because they've been so good to me." "But naturally, and if a little bit of the rewards of success should find its way down into the drain pipe where lives an old and trusted friend of Chester, well, who is the worse for that?" "Well, I don't see how we can make any money." "Well, I haven't worked out any of the details, but this I can tell you. New York is a place where the people are willing to pay for talent. So what's clear is Chester has got to learn some more music. I personally prefer his own compositions. No offense, Chester." "Oh, none. I do myself." "But the human beings, being what human beings are, and who can blame them, would rather hear pieces written by themselves." "But how am I going to learn new songs?" "Well, it's easy as pie." And he darted over to the radio and leaned all his weight on one of the dials and snapped it on. "Not too loudly. The people outside will get suspicious," said Harry. Tucker twisted the dial until a steady, soft stream of music was coming out. "Just play it by ear," he said to Chester. That was the beginning of Chester's formal music education. On the night of the party, he had just been playing for fun, but now he seriously set out to learn some human music. Before the night was over, he had memorized 3 movements from different symphonies, half a dozen songs from musical comedies, the solo part of the violin concerto, and 4 hymns, which he picked up from a late religious service. The next morning, which was the last Sunday in August, all 3 Bellanys came to open the newsstand. They could hardly believe what had happened yesterday and were anxious to see if Chester could continue to sing familiar songs. Mario gave the cricket his usual breakfast of mulberry leaves and water, which Chester took his time eating. He could see that everyone was very nervous, and he sort of enjoyed making them wait. When breakfast was over, he had a good stretch and limbered up his wings. Since it was Sunday, Chester thought that it would be nice to start with a hymn, so he chose to open his concert with Rock of Ages. At the sound of the first notes, the faces of Mama and Papa and Mario broke into a smile. They looked at each other, and their eyes told how happy they were, and they didn't dare to speak a word. During the pause after Chester had finished the Rock of Ages, Mr. Smedley came up to the newsstand to buy his monthly copy of Musical America. His umbrella, neatly folded, was hanging over his arm, as usual. "Well, hey, Mr. Smedley, my cricket's playing hymns," Mario blurted out, even before the music teacher had a chance to say good morning. "And opera. And Italian music." Well, said Mr. Smedley, who didn't believe a word, of course. I see that we've all become very fond of our cricket, but aren't we letting our imagination run away from us just a bit? Oh no, just listen. He'll do it again. Chester took a sip of water and was ready to play some more. This time, however, instead of Rock of Ages, he launched into a stirring performance of Onward Christian Soldiers. Mr. Smedley's eyes popped. His mouth hung open and the color drained from his face. Do you want to sit down, Mr. Smedley? You look a little pale. I think I perhaps better, said Mr. Smedley, wiping his forehead with his silk handkerchief. It's rather a shock, you know. He came inside the newsstand and sat on a stool so that his face was just inches away from the cricket cage. Chester chirped the second verse of Onward Christian Soldiers and finished with a soaring amen. Why, the organist played that in church this morning, exclaimed the music teacher, and it didn't sound half as good. Of course, the cricket isn't as loud as the organ, but what he lacks in volume, he makes up for in sweetness. That was nothing. You should hear him play Adia. May I try an experiment? Said Mr. Smedley. All the Bellanys said yes at once. The music teacher whistled a scale of do, re, mi, fa. Chester flexed his legs, and as quickly as you could run your fingers up the strings of the harp, he had played the whole scale. Mr. Smedley took off his glasses. His eyes were moist. He has absolute pitch, he said in a shaky voice. I have never met in only one person who did. She was a soprano named Arabella Heffinger. Chester started to play again. He went through 2 other hymns he had learned, The Rosary and The Mighty Fortress is Our God, and then did the violin concerto. Naturally, he couldn't play it just as it was written without the whole orchestra to back him up, but he was magnificent, all things considered. Once Mr. Smedley got used to the idea that he was listening to a concert given by a cricket, he enjoyed the performance very well. He had special praise for Chester's phrasing, which meant that it was a neat way for the cricket to play all the notes of the passage without letting them slide together. And sometimes, when he had been deeply moved by a section, the music teacher would touch his chest over his heart and say, That cricket has it here! As Chester chirped his way through the program, a crowd collected around the newsstand, and after each new piece the people applauded and congratulated the Bellanys on their new remarkable cricket. Mama and Papa were fit to burst with pride. Mario was so happy too, but of course he had thought all summer that Chester was a very unusual person. When the playing was over, Mr. Smedley stood up and shook hands with Papa and Mario. I want to thank you for the most delightful hour I have ever spent. The whole world should know of this cricket. A light suddenly spread over his face. Why, I believe I shall write a letter to the music editor of the New York Times. They'd certainly be interested. And this is the letter that Mr. Smedley wrote. To the music editor of the New York Times and to the people of New York, rejoice, O New Yorkers, for a musical miracle has come to pass in our city. This very day, Sunday, August the 28th, surely a day which will go down in musical history, it was my pleasure and privilege to be present at a most beautiful recital ever heard in the lifetime devoted to the subliminal art, music, that is. Being a musicologist myself and having graduated with honors from a well-known local school of music, I feel I am qualified to judge such matters, and I say without hesitation that never have such strains been heard in New York before. But who was the artist? The eager music lover will ask. Was it, perchance, some new singer just lately arrived from a triumphant tour for the capitals of Europe? No, music lovers, it was not. Then was it some violinist who pressed his cheek with love against his darling violin as he played? Wrong again, music lovers. Could it have been a pianist with sensitive long fingers that drew music sounds from the shining ivory keys? Ah, music lovers, you'll never guess it was a cricket, a simple cricket, no larger than half my little finger, which is rather long because I play the piano, but a cricket that it is able to chirp operatic, symphonic, and popular music. Am I wrong, then, in describing such an event as a miracle? And where is this extraordinary performer? Not in Carnegie Hall, music lovers, nor in the Metropolitan Opera. You will find him in the newsstand run by the Bellamy family in the subway station at Times Square. I implore every man, woman, and child who has music in his soul not to miss one of his illustrious, nay, his glorious concerts. Enchantedly yours, Horatio P. Smedley. P.S. I also give piano lessons. For information, write to H.P. Smedley, 1578 West 63rd Street, New York, New York.